Hi, my name's Angela Casey and welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, the podcast that explores Edinburgh's green spaces and the people in them. Today's podcast is set in the grounds of Astley Ainsley, an NHS-owned former hospital that's in the Morningside and Grange area in the south of the city, just below Blackford Hill. Created in the 1920s as a site for convalescents, and with the buildings now closing, it's going through a lot of changes. So I set out to explore it with the Astley Ainsley Community Trust to find out what their thinking is on the future of the site. Welcome to Edinburgh Outdoors, Rebecca Hackett and Helen Sang.
Hello.
Very nice to meet you. You're from the Astley Ainsley Community Trust, and we're going to do a walk today looking around the Astley Ainsley site and talking about some of its past, what it's like at the moment, but also about its future. And we're down now beside Woodburn House. This is a really old house.
There's a lot of these kind of historic villas that were occupying these grounds, I guess, from the 1700s on. So there's several kind of period villas dotted around the grounds that are in kind of various states of, well, not repair, but some have had rather ugly modern additions added on. But you can see it's a very fine Georgian mansion.
It's had its door painted in NHS blue, isn't it?
The whole site is made up of different villas and their grounds that have all been opened up to form the site of the Astley Ainsley Hospital.
Because the hospital was only established in 1923, so there's quite a lot of history that predates that, obviously, on the site. And there was a ladies' golf course and various different spaces that were put together to form the hospital.
I've been down here once before. I know there's a whole wild section down here, isn't there?
There is. You can get right down to the Jordan Burn, which is open at this point. So Morningside has a lot of streams running through it, and the Jordan Burn is one of those. And most of the time it's culverted. But here you can get down and actually see it.
Yeah, this is one of the areas. There's several areas of mature woodland, and this is one of the main ones. There's something like 2,000 trees on the site, but there's over 100 species. So there was a connection with the Royal Botanic Gardens when it was first set up. So there's several tree species here that are quite unique and quite rare. So I think all the trees have tree protection orders in place, apart from the kind of, there's a bit that's kind of more plantation woodlands further to the east here.
Getting some lovely birdsong. It's really loud, actually. Yeah. We're going down to this burn where it comes out of its culvert. And there are big old trees here.
And there are picnic tables.
And picnic tables under a lovely tree. Look at that.
Maybe. One place along here, there's a rope swing.
The grounds are very popular for dog walkers, children. The hospital was a rehabilitation hospital, and that the green space played a really important part in the recovery for patients.
Yeah.
So that's something that a lot of our members are quite passionate about, and we have quite a lot of members who've been either patients in the past or worked at the hospital in the past and really saw the benefit of the therapeutic value of the green space.
I can imagine it would. Look, there's an old gate. That's one of the Clooney's, isn't it?
They must have had a little bridge.
Very close to Egypt News. So this whole area with Little Egypt.
Very peaceful corner of Morningside.
It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah. Land is all owned by NHS Lothian on behalf of the Scottish Government. So it doesn't belong to the City of Edinburgh Council.
No.
It belongs to the NHS.
So there was a man called David Ainsley he was a kind of merchant who lived out in Haddington kind of direction, and he had a nephew, John Astley Ainsley, who I think died in the First World War. And then
it's not clear, but he was 26, but his parents had died when he was young, so David Ainsley, I think, had been his guardian. But John Astley Ainsley had quite a lot of money he'd inherited, so his uncle inherited from him, and his uncle left the money in trust to form a convalescent hospital to support the Edinburgh Royal Infirmary.
I suppose that's part of the difficulty here, is that this land is in a very valuable bit of Edinburgh, isn't it? And I know that's why you're here. It's about making sure it's looked after.
Of course, it was a very old site. There was St Roch's Chapel that was for the health and people with the plague. Yes, on the site. And there's some old wells on the site, probably medieval. But I think that sort of history is rather unclear now.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because I guess if it was being run by the NHS, they'd focus on what they were doing. They weren't going to go around cataloguing wells and sites and that kind of thing, were they?
Obviously, it was the 100th anniversary back in 2023, so there was quite a lot of interest in the kind of history around then. And we also did an oral history project, which was funded by the Heritage Lottery Fund, and we interviewed quite a lot of previous patients and people who had been connected to the hospital over that period, which was really interesting. You can find the information on our website, but there was some lovely stories from people who'd... I like the one about the miners. Yeah, the patients escaping down this road actually to get to the Canny Man's, the pub, and kind of swapping the pass that you could use to get out of the hospital amongst themselves, so they could all disappear down the road and have a few drinks and then stumble back.
A young man who'd been in, because he, recovery from severe injury, but he managed to get out one Friday night to go dancing in the dance hall that was on Morningside Road where Waitrose now is. And apparently in those days the men lined up on one side of the room and the women on the other. And he went to ask the lady to dance, and she was the nurses. Discharged the next day. So we just would walk by the Balfour Pavilion, much of which is boarded up.
Oh, yes.
But the other end has been renovated and is currently housing the Hermitage Medical Practice.
We'll get into the whole land plan and the things you've been looking at, but some of these buildings would go and some of the buildings would stay. Is that right?
That would be the idea. So some of the buildings are listed, not very many of them, and then there are what are called the butterfly pavilions that were built in the 1920s, which were very much built, big windows, and so that patients could be wheeled out into the open air. And many people would like to see them repurposed because they have a very distinctive style. And actually the view from Blackford Hill is a protected view. So Edinburgh City has a whole list of protected views. And this is somewhere I come in the autumn, and you can pick fabulous brambles.
There was actually an application to demolish
this one up here, this building, Millbank.
Right.
There was an application to demolish that, which we objected to, that on the grounds that nothing should be demolished until there was a plan for what would happen to the site.
So it's all still up in the air, is it?
Well, I think it's becoming a bit clearer. It seems that things definitely changed pace, I think, in the second half of last year in terms of the NHS's plan starting to firm up a little bit after several years where it had just been very uncertain in terms of timelines and what would happen.
So at one time, at the end of the 2010s, it was expected that the NHS would sell the whole site off. And that was what drove a lot of action. And now the NHS will keep part of the site.
So this is one of the butterfly ones, is it?
Yeah. But this one, we don't think it is. We think we have succeeded in winning the argument for now in terms of it not being demolished in the short term. I guess this uncertainty about when the hospital is going to be sold, if it's all just kind of compounded that problem that the footprint has kind of shrunk and the buildings have been in this kind of form of uncertainty, so it's not made sense to invest in them. I do a slightly nicer part where it's quite a nice kind of picnic spot, and there's a little pet cemetery which is quite nice when you can see some of the dogs that have lived here through the ages.
Yeah.
One of the things that the community really valued when we did the consultation for the local place plan was the kind of free access through all of the sites, so the tranquility that you get, the green space, the fact that you can just kind of wander around, and people really want to maintain that.
And there's a kids' daycare nursery on site, and they regularly take the children out in the grounds. And St Peter's and Canaan Lane primary schools are very close by, and they eventually got permission to bring children here, so they come and they have free play on the site, which is really good.
That's really nice.
They don't have that much ground at the school, and the kids clearly really enjoy it.
Look at those gate posts and that wall.
We go through here, there's an old wall that's quite historical, I think, over this way as well.
That's it there.
So when was the trust set up?
2018, so
quite recent then.
Just around the point when the sale became evident, and quite a few of the people that were involved in setting up the trust had been involved in the campaign around the Sick Kids Hospital, and the kind of lessons from that experience fed through to us in terms of how to manage that kind of tricky process in terms of community right to buy and all of the kind of legalities and timing points around that. We became a charity in 2021, so that was part of the progress of the organisation in terms of being able to have that status and take advantage of funding opportunities and so on. And we have about 1,000 members at the moment.
And is that local people?
It's a mixture of both. So we have ordinary members are the ones that are in the immediate vicinity, and then we have a different status of members who are beyond they're associate members, and anyone in the world could become an associate member
so
if they
we
have
have
an
to
interest.
This is a beautiful building,
Yes,
isn't
so
it?
this is listed as well. So the last thing it was the consultants' offices. But I think it was the home of medical superintendent who lived on site. In the oral history project, the daughter medical superintendent was interviewed. Very interesting.
Yeah, it really gave you that sense of a bygone age, didn't you?
Yeah.
And she talked about the gates opening when they did the board meeting every year, and all the kind of chauffeurs driving the board members in, and it was almost like visiting royalty. There's a nice orchard here just behind.
Yeah. And is somebody maintaining that?
I suppose the NHS at present is maintaining the ground, so they're mowing the grass and so on, but the orchards, people just help themselves to the apples.
Yes.
Why not?
But it will be interesting to find out whether there are plans for active maintenance of the site now that it's most likely going to be sold off in some way.
Yeah, because you talked at some point, I think you mentioned community gardening.
There's so much competition now for allotments
Yes.
that any space where we could develop new allotments or community gardens, so it's not plots for individuals, it's shared vegetable growing space.
Yeah.
And it would be ideal because here when it was a hospital, they had vegetable gardens.
So we can walk this way. This is a Friends Pathway, it's called, which is a nice shortish route through the grounds, which is quite accessible. So this is Cannon Park, which is another of the big villas.
Gosh, there's a lot of buildings to do things with, aren't there?
Yeah.
I can see the complexity of it now.
Yes, one of the points about development is that it should be done very thoughtfully and progressively without the rest of the site falling into disrepair while they maybe do one section of it.
This is quite interesting, the history of this building being a private school for girls after it was built, but you can see also the history of physiotherapy here and some of the quite pioneering treatments that were used here, gardening therapy, all of these things that we talk a lot about now, but it was really into how it operated.
Heliotherapy, which is basically sunbathing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which we all love.
It's funny, the physiotherapy department was called the massage department.
Yeah, that's fascinating. What a great building. I also like that it has gardening therapy. I mean, there's so many things here that are coming through into what you're hoping will happen to it, that it becomes somewhere that has a positive benefit for the community.
We are pleased that it seems now that the NHS want to retain the Smart Centre, but to have a kind of health corridor seems to be a bit of the idea that's shaping up. So as well as maybe some GP practices and the Smart Centre, there might be other kind of, I guess, more community health facilities. The inpatient services all moved mostly to East Lothian in September last year. I remember coming on a tree walk with Willie, one of our trustees, who's a forester, and he can tell you a lot about the special trees on the site. And I think that's
a
redwood.
North American redwood.
At the moment, we're walking around looking at derelict NHS buildings with graffiti on them, aren't we? And some lovely woodlandy bits in between and some grass and things. But in time, hopefully it becomes a much more positive place.
Well, I think that's why it's quite exciting that things do seem to be happening, because I got involved in the trust a few years ago, and for the first couple of years we had that burst of activity when the trust was formed, and it all seemed very urgent. It's been a bit of a challenge to maintain and keep growing. So now the fact that they are actually commissioning a master plan for the site and the planning process is speeding up, it actually feels like there's an opportunity in the next few years for something positive to happen.
So the local place plans is something that the Scottish Government has introduced to give communities a say in planning, and any community group can identify an area that's within their community and write down their aspirations for the future of that area. So we're next to Morningside, and Morningside Community Council are doing a local place plan for Morningside, and we have developed one by community consultation, including school children and lots of people who have lots of ideas for the site. That has now been sent to Edinburgh City Planners and has been registered, and hopefully will be taken into consideration when the planning for the site is really formalised. One of the big challenges we're putting to the planners and developers, and may require us to take some ownership of the site if we can, is to maintain the green space and the beautiful trees and the lovely relaxing atmosphere and the beautiful prospect of the site while still developing. And we've said that we would like to see any developments to be on the footprint of existing buildings. And
which would make sense.
Yes, so that it doesn't get more developed, but it will get busier, I'm sure, because it's so quiet now that the inpatients have gone.
So the Edinburgh City Council did City Plan 2030, and that was at the point when the NHS was expecting to sell the whole site. So the City Council envisaged 500 homes on the site at that point. But what we're saying in the local place plan is we think that needs to be re-examined, because obviously if the NHS is keeping part of the site and having this health corridor, then that changes this available space for housing. So that's been one of the most important points for the local community, and I think that will be interesting to see how that ends up in the planning process.
You keep mentioning this health corridor. What does that mean?
A lot does depend on funding, but I think it would be things like the Smart Centre, potentially more than one GP practice. There is a need for more GP services in the south of Edinburgh, but also some other kind of community health facilities so that people can avoid needing to go into hospital and be able to take advantage of more health closer to home. And just on the care point, I think there are obviously quite a lot of residential care homes around, not within the site, but just outside the site currently. In the Eric Liddell Centre in Morningside, they have dementia activities going on, and you could imagine in the future there being that kind of provision on the site. But I think it remains to be seen how that interacts with the health corridor. What the community would like is for those kind of things to happen on the site in the future. You know, obviously there is a need for housing in the city, but people are quite interested in having sustainable housing and housing that could combine that kind of care element with independent living. The NHS, I think in one of their strategies a few years ago, that kind of key worker housing for their staff was one of the things that had been mentioned in connection with the site. So I think it would be quite interesting to see how that kind of interacts with the planning process, and there's going to be quite a negotiation coming over the next year in this master plan process between the NHS and the council, and we're hoping that the Community Trust will be able to play quite a key part in that process.
Yeah. So what made you each decide that you were going to get involved? What was the personal drive that made you think, I'm going to do this? Because it's a lot of work getting involved in something like this when you've got day jobs and things.
Well, for me, I think it was just, passed through the site several times a day from Blackford up to James Gillespie's, and saw that there was a call out for trustees, and it seemed like a good opportunity to get involved in something that could have a positive impact in the community and keep some of the benefits of the site for the long term.
What about you, Helen? Why did you get involved?
Well, I've been to quite a lot of the meetings that the Community Trust had, and they were really interesting. They had things like talks from architects who talked about how you build housing in different ways so that people can interact and intergenerational housing. And then I retired and I thought, well, I've got time, so I'll like to get involved.
It's not only important that people do it and get involved and volunteer like you've both done, but it can also be incredibly rewarding, can't it?
But yeah, you do really enjoy the events where you're getting out and about and meeting people, and we have done a lot of good things.
And now we've got the local place plan, which everybody can see on the Astley Ainsley Community Trust website. We really want more people to get involved now, and they don't need to become trustees and have that sort of level of responsibility, but if they've got expertise in, say, natural environment or community gardens or housing, we're really looking for people who would like to come and work with us.
We are always on the lookout for more trustees, and I think people who've got business, fundraising, communications background as well as the other thing that's really going to be helpful, because we are moving into this new phase, hopefully, where we are going to need to be firming up the business plans and bringing in different funding sources and doing a lot of lobbying at the political level. This bit is this is my favourite part. Yeah, look at this. You've got these kind of lovely lawn and there's kind of woodland in beyond, and you can run around and play in there. Kids can. It's quite a lot of little paths.
If you go by at night, you can hear tawny owls hooting, so they must nest somewhere in here.
I just find it so fascinating, these places where you're in the middle of the city, but actually suddenly you find particularly where there's been something here before and then it's begun to sort of disintegrate a bit. What do you really feel like you would like to see come from everything you're doing here?
I think what we all think is that this is a really, you've walked around it this afternoon and it's a damp January afternoon, but it's a magical site. And it's got lots of really interesting buildings and fabulous trees and a very peaceful feeling to it. And it's amazing that we still have this area right near the centre of the city, and that it should be treated as a unique opportunity to do really imaginative things in the future with it, to maintain the trees and the green space, but also put interesting new buildings in or develop the old buildings for new purposes. Make social contributions to Edinburgh, particularly in the health and well-being area. So this is one of the butterfly buildings here ahead of us.
And they do really stand out, don't they, from Blackhead Hill when you're looking down. They are very distinctive.
They're very distinctive. And also the way that the site slopes to the south is very distinctive. And you can see why they chose it.
And these were the Nissan, I think these are the Nissan huts, they're called, that were built during the war for rehabilitation. So it's still being used for some outpatient services.
We're walking around, it's a Sunday afternoon, so there are going to be more people about. But do you have any idea of how many people are using it for recreation currently?
We haven't done a count.
There was one a few years ago.
I should think it's fairly seasonal.
Yes, I'm sure it is. Particularly on this January afternoon, you're thinking, well, you might not come here for a walk. But I actually think you would. I think it's really atmospheric and lovely. Oh, yes, this is
that's the Smart Centre,
new bit.
Which is
more modern.
Yeah.
More modern. It's a very high-quality physiotherapy centre for people with prosthetic limbs and really big challenges.
I mean, you could see that they could keep some of this area here, couldn't you? And it could be
this kind of corridor. Yeah. This is a commercial woodland down in that area, so that's quite interesting to explore down there. There's a ruined tennis court from, I guess, one of these grand houses at one point, and then another exit down onto Egypt Mews.
Yeah. You can now hear, because it's getting later in the afternoon, the jackdaws beginning to flock about.
It's lovely when you walk through at certain times of day and it's just, the sky is swarming with them.
So, each of you, where is your favourite spot here? Where do you like to go?
I think for me it's where we just were up when you kind of...
northeast of the site where the dog cemetery is, I like that bit when the rhododendrons are out. It's absolutely lovely. But also I love just a lot of the really interesting non-native pine trees. There's so many interesting, great big trees now, because they must be 150 years old.
Yeah, I think the trees are fascinating as you go around.
And just all the hidden paths that you come across. I've got a dog now, so I explore it in a different way to what I did before. If you're walking through to Morningside and you want your dog to have a bit of a run around, you can kind of go into some of the more quiet bits away from the roads and up by where the Millbank Pavilion and some of the kind of ruined bits where you can...
And it's all open access, that people can come in and walk round.
We don't have a right to access it.
No.
So it's the gift of NHS Lothian, and to give them credit, they've become more and more open to people using the site and allowing the primary schools to bring children here.
Yeah. There's a couple of public rights of way through the site, but you can wander around at your leisure.
I think all the stuff on the edges, like your favourite bit near the cemetery, and I think so far my favourite bit's down by the Jordan Burn. I loved it down there, it was really nice. And I can see that people could come and find their little areas, and then the picnic benches by the burn. I thought that was lovely.
It is such a big site. I think there's probably a lot of people that don't really realise it's here, or there's any reason to come through the gate. It was incorporated into the NHS in 1948. So that was when the original trust that was set up to manage the bequest was kind of transitioned into the NHS.
I think most people would like to see it stay for health purposes, but that's not going to happen.
I think it's great that a group like you have got together and that you're doing it.
It's exciting. Big site. Obviously, there are a lot of community trusts which are taking over specific buildings. But I think that's a challenge.
Yes, Oh, well.
You wonder what message went out, don't you?
What a wonderful thing to hear that. Again, it's that thing about we're in a city and we've got this beautiful thing going over our head. It's fantastic.
We have done various studies on nature here. So there's an organisation called Wild Reiki, and they did a bio blitz in 2016, and I think just in 2 hours they saw 66 different species of birds and grasses, flowers, trees. And I think we've recorded about 100 different species of birds here. So it is really quite a special place for nature, and it's got that kind of nature corridor value as well, given the location that you've got you've got Blackford Hill beyond, and then the meadows to the north. So it's got that kind of important connecting factor for wildlife, which is really important.
And this is fantastic. I mean, seeing this while standing next to NHS vans. Obviously, you've got partners and you're talking to other people, but where do you get your funding from?
Well, we don't have very much, so we charge £1 membership. And we really are going to start needing to ask members and associate members for more contributions. But we have had grants. We've had a grant from City of Edinburgh Council for running the most recent consultation basis for the local place plan, and we had the Heritage Lottery Fund grant for the Oral History Project. But we really need money now to build up the organisation.
We were successful back when the Trust was first formed in 2018. There was a successful bid to the Scottish Land Fund, and that was when we did quite a lot of the work that's kind of formed the basis of our local place plan. So there was a visioning exercise done at that point. So that was quite important in laying the foundations for what we've done more recently. But we do need to think about our membership model and how to make sure that we can do more in the future.
I'm loving this.
One of the stepping stones we're quite interested in, where we have had some positive discussions with the NHS, is taking over one of the buildings on the site and being able to use that as a community centre. And hopefully that is something that could happen in the not too distant future, and we could then be able to build capacity and have a footprint on the site and be able to fundraise for that specific purpose. I mean, it would be fantastic if we could own the whole site, but I think realistically it's how can we influence what happens on the whole site.
And find partners.
But I can see that the whole thing is daunting.
Vast, yes.
Because it's huge.
Yeah.
So you could do with more people to help you as trustees. You'd be interested in talking to people if they wanted to come on board, or people who might want to partner with you.
And I suppose that's what we would like to keep in the future, is that balance between green space and development. And it's actually, it's the second highest biodiversity value of all NHS Lothian sites.
So as you know, we asked 3 questions to everybody at the end, so I'm going to ask you those. What does the outdoors mean for you?
Well, I think it's just, for me it's recharging your batteries and getting that opportunity to, life's busy with work and kids and everything else, and just being able to enjoy Edinburgh and all the lovely green spaces on your doorstep and have that time with yourself, with your dog, with your family, just to recharge your batteries.
Yes, and I'm retired now, so I don't need to have that relaxing time away from work, but actually being outside I feel so much fitter and healthier if I spend a few hours outside than staying in the house.
We're getting a last burst of January sunshine
lovely,
here.
Yeah.
And either of you, has the outdoors ever helped you at a difficult time?
No, just day to day, I think, but not particularly kind of...
I have to say my favourite holiday, which my husband and I have been doing for the last... a bit more than 10 years with my brother and his wife, are going on walking holidays. And I love that sort of holiday more than anything, where you go walk from one place to another and you're outside all day. It's just great. I feel so good afterwards.
Yeah, it is good. And the final question was, this is easy because I find so many people say the place we're in at the moment, but where's your favourite place in or around Edinburgh?
Well, I think I live on Blackford Hill, so I think that's probably the green space I use the most, just, daily kind of up and down and roundabout. And I just love all the different paths and routes you can take, the fact that you can be going there hundreds of days in a year and never take the same route, it feels, because there's so many different options.
And you can walk for miles, can't you, there? It's amazing. I walk around it too.
I would have said Blackford Hill for many years until I got to know Astley Ainsley better, because I was a child, lived very close to Blackford Hill. In those days, in the school summer holidays, my mother would give us something to drink in a bottle and sandwiches. We'd spend all day up there without any adults keeping an eye on us. We just had a great time. That's one of the values of Astley Ainsley, allowing children to make their own games. It's so important.
I think it's nice. It's nice to see them.
And this is so accessible. Blackford Hill is great, but I think having places that, there are a lot of people living in flats in Morningside and Marchmont who don't have necessarily access to green space, just come here and enjoy the space.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it's lovely. The jackdaws have all gone.
Yeah. The sun
is shining on
coming
us.
On.
Yeah. It is a bit. We all need to go home for our January cup of tea, don't we?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that I've got coffee walnut cake
Smells
at home.
Oh, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for
Thank
inviting
you.
I hope that it's helped put across some of the wonderful things about the area, and obviously if people want to find out more, they can go on your website.
Yep, aact.scot.
Yeah, I'll put a link on it at the blurb on the podcast. Yes. I will tag you on Facebook and Instagram as well.
And we're always looking for new members as well, just people who want to hear more about what we're doing can become members, and
brilliant. Well, all I'll say is all power to your elbow, because I can see that this site could be completely magical, and bits of it are fantastic.
Let's hope so over the next few years.
Lovely. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, no, thank you.
It was interesting exploring Astley Ainsley and poking around in all those wild spaces. And I highly recommend you check out the Community Trust website, particularly if you'd like to support them in any way. And thank you, as always, for listening to Edinburgh Outdoors. If you enjoyed it, please rate it or give it a review. And don't forget to tell your friends about it too. And if you know of a green space in or around Edinburgh that might like to be featured, please get in touch.